So when did you decide to apply to come to work at Orange County Park?
23rd, 1973. It was on the Friday after Thanksgiving and before it was a holiday, which seemed strange to me that they would start on a Friday, but that was the first of the week. And then I had the weekend off, and I came back, and I was a groundskeeper at Laguna Niguel Regional Park for about 2.5 years. From there, I and a number of us were promoted to park ranger trainees, and I was assigned to Carbon Canyon Regional Park and worked there for about 2.5 years. Went on to Craig Regional Park, worked there for about 1.5 years, and then I was promoted to senior park ranger and given the task of opening a new park, which was Los Coyotes Regional Park over in the city of Buena Park. And I and my staff opened up that park in 1981, and I was there until 1985, then went back to Carbon Canyon Regional Park as a senior ranger, and did a short stint up at Featherly Regional Park, and then back to Carbon, then over to Craig, and then eventually got promoted and came over here to Irvine Park in 1991. And 93, I went to O'Neill Regional Park. I was there for 8.5 years. And then I went to Mason Regional Park. I was there for about 6 months, and then was transferred up to Yorba Regional Park in Anaheim. That's where I finished my career.
Great. And so, can you tell me how many regional parks actually existed back in the day and when you first started working in parks? And also, what were their names?
Of course, North Beaches, that was our headquarters down at Bayside Drive, and I believe Dana Point Harbor was then active. Irvine Regional Park, from my understanding, was the first regional park. Of course, the park is over 100 years old. It's been here quite a while. The next park was O'Neill Regional Park, which is up in Trabuco Canyon. It's a camping park. And then I believe Featherly Regional Park, which is located up in Santa Ana Canyon off the 91 freeway. And then, of course, Miles Square, I think, may have been the next park. I started at Laguna Niguel Regional Park. It was about 6 months old, along with Mason Regional Park. And it was after that that the other parks were basically constructed and then came online and became active facilities.
That sounds great. All right, and on for the next question. Can you tell me what are some of the funny things that you encountered while working and dealing with visitors in the park?
Every park had its characters, people, you know, that were there every day, and sometimes they could cause you some situations. I was at O'Neill Regional Park when I received a letter, a handwritten letter from a gal, can't remember the first name, her last name was Cawood. It's pronounced the same way as my name, but spelt differently. And she was in the process of enlisting my help to take the O'Neill Regional Park out of the county system and turn the land over to the Indians, the local tribe. And she had actually sent a letter to the Board of Supervisors saying that I had stated that I would help her with this, which of course was not true. As that turned out, you know, I finally met this person, and she was a nice person, but maybe not quite all of her oars in the water. Eventually, she was camped up at O'Neill, and she broke into a motorhome, but the person who owned the motorhome was sleeping in it. He restrained her. We called the deputy sheriff, and she went to jail, and that was the last I ever seen of her. So, funny or not, but dealing with having to send another letter to the Board of Supervisors and explaining what was going on, and no, I was not in the process of giving O'Neill Park away to the Indians. You know, that was not going to happen. So, there was that. There was another one at O'Neill Regional Park. It happened with a groundskeeper. I won't mention any names. He'd come to work on a Saturday morning. He apparently had a hellacious hangover. He talked to the ranger, the weekend ranger in charge, to let him go get a dozen donuts. Okay, so ranger said, sure, go get them. Well, 2 months or 2 hours later, this groundskeeper had not come back to the park, so they initiated a search for him. And between I was called and knew kind of what was happening. Anyway, they were in the process of building a 241 bridge across the Arroyo, and it was just in the process of being constructed, and the roads and everything were there. This groundskeeper had taken it upon himself to drive up on the roadway there because nobody was there. devour about half the donuts, somehow decided to drive a little further, went around a corner and ran into the back of a water truck that was parked there. This is all happening with the county truck. We're trying to figure out where he's at. Well, eventually the deputy sheriffs located him, and when they did, he had fallen asleep in the truck, laying in the seat with his feet hanging out the window. And they were taking pictures, videos of all this, and doing an investigative report. And so by the time that got back to me, when I came back to work, I was told, Cliff, maybe you better sit down. We've got a problem we have to work with. And it went from there to there. Anyway, unfortunately, this person lost his job, but that was the donut episode. Another one that I encountered, I thought was always interesting, never could really get an answer. I always have referred to it as the O'Neill Regional Park ghost story. And it was one of those Saturday nights I was working. I was working a weekend shift, working a night shift. I went home, I left at midnight, along with the other person. All of us left at midnight. Somewhere in between, an elderly couple was camped in this one campsite. It was a pull-through in another campsite across the road. The wife had a heart attack and passed away. Well, the husband called out the paramedics and they all went to the hospital and everything. Okay, so I'm back at work the next day and I'm driving by this campsite, the trailer and stuff still there, and the people across the way flagged me down. Mr. Ranger, Mr. Ranger. I said, yes. Can I help you? And they said, you know, last night person passed away. And I said, that's my understanding in the trailer. He said, well, a couple hours later, he said, I went to the restroom about 4 in the morning. He said, and I saw a woman in white walking on the gravel walkway but not making any noise. And he said, I thought that was kind of interesting because he said, I didn't stop, but I saw this person walking but not making any noise on the gravel. And so he went back to his campsite and he told me about this. I said, well, it was probably just somebody walking through there, nothing to get excited over. Well, 1 month later to the day, I'm working nights again. And it's literally, the sun's getting ready to go down. I go drive by the campsite, and there's a campsite across the way. A whole different set of people, different group of people flagged me down, Mr. Ranger, Mr. Ranger. And I said, yes, can I help you? They said, do you believe in ghosts? And I said, well, and I thought to myself, if I say I believe in ghosts, this is going to hit the register, hit the front page that, yeah, the county believes in ghosts and the park ranger verifies this. That's nonsense. I just said, no, I really don't. And the guy says, you know, it's really strange. He said, I got up last night to go to the bathroom, he said, and there was a woman in white walking on the gravel over here. Nobody's camped her, but she was walking on the gravel walkway and not making any noise. And he said, when I came back, she was gone. He said, it was really strange. And these people didn't know that a month before a person had passed away there. And he says, it's really strange. And I said, well, it was probably just somebody passing through there, and maybe it looked like they were walking on the gravel, but really weren't. But I said, no, I'm sure there's no ghost out here to be worried about. And the guy said, okay, and went his merry way. I drove off thinking to myself, was there really a ghost or was there not? And to this day, we'll never know. But it was always interesting because it was two different groups directly connected with the same episode, but they were a month apart and obviously didn't know each other, but had the same exact sighting at about the same time in the morning. So take it for what it's worth.
What are some of the responsibilities you had while working in the parks? What was expected of park rangers back then? And was the park budget adequate back then?
Back when I started, for park rangers, there really was no formal training. I became a park ranger trainee at Laguna Niguel Regional Park. I worked the weekend with a couple of others. The ranger showed us how to log in the money from the gate. And the next week, we all reported to our respective parks. I reported on a Friday. The park ranger in charge showed me around, took me down, and introduced me to the staff. Went up to the office, showed me where different things were, and said, oh, by the way, I'm taking the rest of the day off. I'll see you Monday. And there I was working the weekend, brand new park ranger trainee, and that's how I started my training. Most of us did. It was all basically on the job. Learn it as you go, yeah, the good, the bad, and everything else. You know, that's how we were taught. I think this day and age it's much more sophisticated. I understand there's a park ranger academy and we have reserves and everything now. The training is much more sophisticated, much more professional, but in those days, it was a real learning experience by the seat of your pants. We were kind of expected to know everything, to know what to do if we had a major irrigation line break, what to do if you had problems with your structures in the park, what had to be repaired. You need to know something about grass maintenance, tree maintenance, anything about the maintenance end of it. Plus you had to know the administrative part of what was needed to basically operate the park from a managerial end. We were in charge of the staff, so all the park crew was our responsibility. We had to deal with the public. We did the interpretive walks and talks, and any problems that the public had, it came to us. We were expected to deal with that. We were expected to do the budgets, our annual budgets, and to handle all of the other administrative works reports, incident reports, handle emergencies, people injured in the park, take care of animals that were brought to us, you know, what to do, where to go. So we kind of had to really do everything. Now it may be a little more compartmentalized, but in those days we were sort of quote unquote a jack of all trades, and maybe not master of all of them, but most of them. Overall, we usually were able to get the things that we needed to operate the parks. So I would say the budgets were adequate, maybe more than adequate in some cases. We had good equipment. We had, you know, very good patrol trucks, equipment, any other equipment that we needed in the way of, you know, mowing equipment, small tractors, whatever was kind of required at the park. We were usually able to get that equipment. That was not always a problem. Sometimes we might have to wait a little while, but it usually came through.
All right, that sounds really good. And did you ever have any type of emergencies to deal with? For example, lost children, storms, medical situations, or brush fires?
But depending on the facilities where you're at, if you're like an Irvine Park or an O'Neill or a Carbon Canyon, Casper's, a lot of wildland fires, especially in the fall when the Santa Anas start to blow. This was pretty routine. If the fire happened close to your facility, Orange County Fire Authority would come in and basically take over. They would establish a fire camp and work all of their equipment out of there, and then you sort of either had to redirect your campers to another part of the camp or campground. If you were at O'Neill or if you were at a park like this, you probably evacuated some or just, you know, tried to keep people out of the way. And sometimes sometimes it would last for a week, so we would actually close the park to the public, and the fire department would be in charge until they got the fire put out and then everything cleaned up. That happened a lot. Emergencies, usually emergencies on weekends and the major holidays, people getting hurt. This happened a lot of frequent paramedic calls to assist people, and the paramedics were always good. We just had to be at the gate so we could direct them down to the site where people were injured. This happened frequently, part of our job. Lost children, on an Easter or a Memorial Day, 4th of July, 3 or 4 lost children a day was not uncommon. The parents would either come and give us a description, and we would go out and look, eventually find the child, or we'd find the child wandering around. I can't find my mom and dad, so we just put them in the truck and we go through the park with a loudspeaker saying we have a so-and-so child dressed so-and-so. His parents are lost. Would the parents please respond? And sure enough, most time within about a half an hour, we would find the lost parents, so to speak. That happened frequently, and of course all of this would initiate incident reports and everything else we would have to do, along with other reports such as mountain lion sighting reports, which was frequent, especially in O'Neill and Casper's Park, some of those.